Today is the memorial of Saint Josaphat. Who, you might ask, was that? If you were a Ukrainian American, you might have heard of him. The Ukrainian Catholic Seminary is even named for him. In addition, who was Titus? To begin, the pastoral epistles, 1st and 2nd Timothy and Titus, we know were not written by Paul, but by colleagues of his who might have traveled with him and shared his ministry. We also know that they were written after Paul's authentic letters, and because the Christian community had grown and developed since then, had some different concerns. Titus was a Gentile convert of Paul's, and the letter may have been written around the year 100. Titus is concerned with the value and maintenance of the ecclesial and social order of his time. He is concerned with the roles of women and men in the community. His concerns reflect the mores of the time, and thus he rejects the idea of women teaching men or teaching at all in a worship context. We can at least rejoice in how far we have come. Finally, with excellent women scholars teaching in universities and seminaries, and our own sisters offering reflection at worship. But we do agree with Titus that, quote, the grace of God has appeared, saving all and training us to reject godless ways, as we await Jesus' return, when salvation is given to us through grace alone. But then who is the mysterious Josaphat, and what has he to do with this? Titus and Luke are both concerned with responsible ministry on the part of Christian community leaders. Those who plow the fields and tend the sheep, that is, bishops and pastors, have only done what they were obliged to do. And salvation, theirs and ours, comes from grace alone, not our efforts. Josaphat was born in an area perhaps near that of my great-grandparents. They used to say, when asked what country they were born in, that you looked outside to see what flag was flying that day. The definition of a border area: Poland, Lithuania, Russia, what is now Belarus and Ukraine. In any event, a troubled part of Eastern Europe. Josaphat entered the monastery as a young man and was eventually called to be an archbishop. He lived at a tumultuous time in that corner of Europe where there was a long-standing conflict over, of course, property and liturgy between Greek Catholics, also called Ruthenians, loyal to Rome, and Orthodox Christians. It was a time of great violence. Josaphat, for defending the property and interests of Greek Catholics, was murdered in 1623. And so the church has considered him a responsible servant who only did what he was obliged to do. We may not be asked to shed our blood as martyred bishops did, and still do in Latin America and Africa, but we are asked, in the words of the entrance antiphon, to persevere in loving brotherhood. We have our own troubles these days, trying to live in loving brotherhood in civil society and in the church. Perhaps we ought to keep in mind that we, when we act responsibly for peace and justice, are doing no more than we are obliged to do as responsible servants, even if some days it looks like a lot.